Good evening and welcome to the revised Scrutiny Management Board, which carries on from the terminated one on 31st of October due to being in court. I also apologise for the late start due to some technical difficulties. However, we're ready to go. So I'll start with apologies for absence, and I have Councillor North and Councillor Irwin. Next, the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of August 2024. Can I have somebody propose that they be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. And Councillor Llewellyn to second. All happy with that? Yes. Thank you. Grand. I have no request to attend the meeting. Officers? No? No. Declarations of interest. As obviously some of the items affect everybody, but any particular items of declarations? No. So we're straight on to the annual work plan 24-25, and do you want to introduce it, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the updated work plan which originated at the August meeting, and it's the work plan for the slightly shortened year due to the general election at the beginning of July and the council elections that are coming through in May 25, and the pre-election period, which will come in sort of about middle of March. So we have appended to the report, sorry, just get the right document. We've got the scrutiny work plans for the three committees attached to Appendix A, and then we've also got the executive forward plan from November 24 to February 25. So if there's any particular items for pre-scrutiny that you would like to add to the work plans. The only other thing that I've got to present to you in terms of the work plans is at the executive meeting held on 14th of November, the executive considered an item, left behind communities in Northamptonshire. And this was a progress report in transition to business as usual. So this originated from a scrutiny review panel initiated by the Scrutiny Commission back in 2021, and the work concluded in July 22 and was reported to the executive in August 2022. So this it's been an update report on the latest position to the executive, and arising from that report, part of the executive decisions was to request that the Scrutiny Management Board consider if the report should be received and considered by any of its scrutiny committees, and this would be in advance of a report going to full council, which is likely to be beginning of March 2025. So if you want to consider whether you would like that to be considered, and the appropriate committee for that would be Place and Environment Scrutiny, is neighbourhoods is within its terms of reference. So with that, I shall pass it back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So if we'd like to start with Appendix A, which is the first one is corporate scrutiny. I don't know whether you'd like to start with the plan or with a sort of run through of what's happening in budget scrutiny at the moment, whichever way you feel.
We'll just go through it page by page and then talk. If we go through it page by page,
sure.
That would be good.
So page 17 is the first one for you, isn't it?
Yep. We have two substantive things coming forward. Normal sort of budget things, but I thought we had 2 extra coming on. So we've got key performance indicators, the capital forecast outturn, budget forecast update, and obviously we're going through the budget scrutiny at this moment. In February, we've got the Children's Trust back again. And then we have 2 briefing papers to schedule when they're coming forward. And those 2 panels are the ICT Value for Money Scrutiny Review. How are we, has that started to meet yet?
I can give you an update there, because we, from my side, we had no numbers where I was told just a day or 2 ago that one of the names wasn't allowed to be on it, which is, so I've got to find another name. But I'm not sure from the opposition side whether there's been any new names, because they were looking for one there as well. So as soon as I find out a name, that one can restart.
And also the customer service delivery update, again, is a briefing paper to come forward. So ICT can't come until they've obviously met, but would like customer services delivery update briefing to come round shortly. And then, as I say, for the ICT review panel, that hasn't yet met yet, although it was to be reconvened after stopping halfway through last year.
Yeah, apparently some of the members have left that group, so it's had to be reconstituted.
On budget scrutiny, we've held the children's budget scrutiny phase 1 on the 28th of October. On the 11th of November, we had enabling services. Tuesday, 12th of November, we had adults, health, partnership and housing. This morning we had place and economy. And on Thursday this week, we will have public health and communities, and that will conclude phase 1 of the panel sessions. We need to factor in another meeting to say where we are, what we need to do ready for phase 2. So have we gathered all the information that we needed, and how we take on phase 2. That is all basically, apart from the children's service, which is on the 2nd of December. Most of those other meetings are throughout January. Concluding with our budget scrutiny session on Tuesday the 21st, which we will then have do our reports with our scrutiny support officers ready to go to the executive. That's basically it.
Okay.
However,
yes.
There were some questions around some of the processes in the budget scrutiny. One of those being how we involve, or do we involve members? How can the public be involved? And then the other question that has been asked through the process is, should the meetings be online or face-to-face? They're all booked for online meetings at the moment. But those are the questions that have been asked of us to bring to this as part of that review panel. Yeah, back to you.
Well, we'll take your advice. I mean, thank you for letting some of us, including myself, attend the meetings and contribute. To me, all members who are not exec should have the opportunity to input, and because a lot of them will have expertise and a lot of them will have experience. And how their input is, you'll be chairing it, so how their input is to your thing. But I think that's certainly something that members should have, and local experience and so on. Sorry, go on, Councillor Lavelle.
Just to that point, does the chair of corporate scrutiny have a model for member participation? Like, for example, as chairs, if we want to come to the budget scrutiny, can we help, shape the budget?
And that is the question, because we're told at the moment, because the scrutiny protocol's not in place, and it's very much a process of looking at the budgets. Should people be involved at that level? Or should it be the review group that is actually reviewing? And I can see the rationale for both sides. But scrutiny is about very much an evidence-based thing, and I think that members could bring some of that evidence in some of the work that they're doing that we might not, think about budget-wise. So I would like, obviously I didn't know today one other person was coming, so I didn't let that person speak at the meeting, but contributed 2 or 3 pertinent questions through the chat that she could bring. So I would like to see a process where we can allow, and obviously not too many, but if they feel that they can bring something to one of the budget scrutiny sessions, then they should be able to.
I think a number will be working and have other commitments, but I think from what you're saying, that provided they book in, so that you're aware of them coming. I mean, there were more there today than had been in one of the earlier sessions, as if the sort of word had got around, I don't know. Yeah. So perhaps if we can say to councillors, you're welcome to attend, but you must book in, get the link, however it's done, and then it's under your control whether you let them in or whether you let them speak and so on.
What is the thought of our support officers on that? Is it relevant to ask that question?
So the the format of budget scrutiny is that scrutiny of the budget is through the Corporate Scrutiny Committee and then through the Budget Scrutiny Panel, which is the membership of Corporate Scrutiny, reporting back into Corporate Scrutiny at the end of January. So it's important that the decisions and the recommendations arising from the scrutiny panel are that of the panel rather than that of the sort of wider councillors. I think you make a good point about sort of not wishing to exclude input from other councillors where it can be helpful. So we've certainly invited all councillors to attend the scrutiny sessions to observe. We can look at, it may be that if a councillor wants to raise a particular issue as part of sort of signing up to the meeting, that perhaps they provide it in writing to you as the chair, and then that can be passed on to the officers, and you can ask officers to sort of include that as part of their presentation. And I think it should be through you as chair of the budget panel. So, because, as you say, you need to sort of control the sort of amount and range of sort of queries, suggestions coming in, so that it's manageable.
The issue with that is you can't ask subsidiaries if you can't ask subsidiary questions if you do it through officers. No, just you don't have the access or the conversation. When today there were a number of conversations that got stuff out of, didn't it? And
yeah.
Councillor Val wants.
Yeah, so if it's just on this topic, if it's through if it's not on Teams, which I'm guessing it will be, using the chat function, can officers not try and consolidate members' recommendations or suggestions? So it's not, as you say, chaotic, different questions being posed, the amount of questions coming out, loads of hands up, etc., which could delay the process. But actually, we could streamline it if an officer was responsible for consolidating themes that come up regularly. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I've got no objection to that at all. So, and I think there one or two observers were sort of putting comments into the chat function at this morning's Place and Economy session, and I think that's probably a good sort of compromise of being able to sort of elucidate their thoughts as well.
Councillor Roberts.
I've got absolutely no problem at all with having a wider franchise of people coming to discuss these things. But I think you're right, Chair, and you're right also, Ben, to say be cautious. Let's make sure that we manage it properly. I mean, at the moment, there are people sitting in representing everybody on the committee anyway. You could ask them their opinion on something and they could take it to the meeting. If you do bring people on board, I think it's got to be controlled by you so that it doesn't get out of hand. And I found, it's just a personal thing, I found a lot of emails flying around. Occasionally was a little distracting, but only occasionally, and I'll put up with distraction to make sure enough people. We used to do some scrutiny meetings at the county council where they used to be in, I can't remember the name of the room, but there were a lot of people in that room. Basically, if somebody applied to the chair and said, can I come and talk about this subject, that would be approved as a subject, and then it would you buy a slot, you get a slot in that meeting, and I found that fascinating and very rewarding. I must say.
It's in the room under the chamber, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah, but it was a big table like this, but it was 3 times the size of this. Lots and lots of people got there and had their say and were heard.
Well, it was pretty much an open invitation to council.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us on to the second bit, which is whether they're online, whether they're in person, or whether they're hybrid of some form.
Yeah.
And personally, I mean, the meeting before, I dropped out 5 times, and then in the end, I had to come off my tablet and use the phone because and today, Councillor Mercer had problems.
Yes.
There are loads of and Councillor Marks couldn't get on. So it does concern me that solely being online is not completely fit for purpose. I must admit I prefer Zoom. I know you have a problem with Zoom, but I prefer Zoom. It's lower bandwidth, so it's more reliable. I wonder whether hybrid is the way forward, so that people who want to come in can. But sorry, go on.
Well, obviously, my first love is having everybody in the room, because then you get a real feel for the thing, and we have conversations, and you get so much more out of it. But I think it could be part of the mix at the discretion of the chair and the officers, where you could have some of them, a mix of them, online, and others not online.
And it depends on whether the rooms are available. I mean, that's the other, you know, on Teams it is very much sort of everybody can get there no matter what the weather. Whereas, you know, face-to-face needs a room, needs the all the paraphernalia that goes with that. And it also needs the officers to come in. So is it a resource thing? You know, does it take more for face-to-face than it does, you know, sorry.
Go on. Yeah.
Well, the two meetings we've all been to today, the first one I think would have benefited from all of us being in the room. This one, you just about get away with having it online.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of, you know, your management, both of you manage these things with the officers' support. And I was told that online meetings tend to be more popular, more people turn up to them, and that's what we're trying to do, get as many people having an opinion as possible. So I don't think we can ignore them.
Yeah. I mean, the other difficulty was, as soon as the slides are on screen, you can only see about half a dozen people, so you were having trouble knowing who's got their hand up, which is more difficult to chair if you're, you know, if you only got a small
I
screen.
find it easier to chair online.
You just ignore them. So what do we want to do? I mean, presumably the last meeting, the concluding session will be in person.
Yeah.
That's yes, that will be in person.
That's in person. But of course, in phase 2, what you've got is the presentation of the proposals. So there will be a lot of things to digest.
Yes.
I'm hopeful that the slides will come out in good time to allow people to do so. So do we want to, well, certainly for this phase, keep it as it is, and think about it?
And maybe we ask our officers, you know, is it because obviously you've got to factor those meetings in, and there are 5 of them online.
5. I'm not so worried about the children's, because that budget's already set. I'm worried about the Children's Trust, but not.
Yeah, it's not the children's services; it's children's service.
I think if we, at the end of phase 1, if we review how it's gone online, I think one of the things that we want to do is sort of review attendance figures from phase 1 this year compared to phase 1 last year. Yep. There are obviously resource implications of being in person, hybrid, and there's actually a report going to Democracy and Standards next Monday, because you may or may not be aware that the government have started a consultation to move to online/hybrid meetings, which is similar to what is already present in Wales. So you may wish to feed into colleagues democracy and standards, because we'll be providing a response to the consultation for that.
We've got to have a meeting between the end of phase 1 and the beginning of phase 2. So if we have that as a face-to-face meeting, if we can factor it in, let's sit round the table and discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing we got is how do we get some access for the public?
Yes.
And I'm wondering after that conversation whether it might be that when we've got to the stage of later on towards the end of phase 2, whether we have a public Teams meeting, because obviously it sounds like unless we can organise four ones in 4 locations around the authority, maybe an open thing for the public to access would be something we could do. I don't know. Sorry.
So I would say that is a matter for the executive. So the executive had a meeting on Thursday just gone, which set out the indicative budget timeline and process, and they have detailed how they are going to engage with the public in that report. So they've decided, so corporately, there is going to be a variety of consultation undertaken, which includes online survey, which is available at libraries for those without internet access, an email address and telephone number, social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, postal address, emails to key stakeholders inviting them to comment through the consultation channels, asking them to promote consultation to their members, communities, partner organisations, voluntary sector infrastructure organisations. Then there'll also be resident panel members and other stakeholders will be invited to comment as well. So there is sort of quite a comprehensive consultation exercise that the executive have agreed and approved, as I say, Thursday just gone.
And very little of which will reach the ordinary man on the Clapham omnibus. How is all that, the responses going to be fed into the scrutiny process? When does that consultation close?
So, as I say, so scrutiny is a consultee. So scrutiny's feedback will be fed into the executive at the end of the consultation, as will the consultation responses from members of the public and partners and key stakeholders.
But the point is, if members of the public and organisations, community organisations in particular, often find something that we've missed or we don't understand or don't know about, how will we get the opportunity to comment on that if we don't know the response? I mean, it used to happen quite a lot at the county. The people would come along and they'd say, they'd give you a rundown of their organisation, and you wouldn't have had a clue about what the effect of something you were doing in the budget was until you heard from them. So, you know, I would have thought that if somebody's got something to say, we should, you know, it should be scrutinised. Councillor Howell.
What are the challenges of doing the 4-area sort of local hub consultations where public can come in with councillors and we have those discussions? Because then that straight away answers the question that Councillor Lorman's raising. We can hear about it and we can have that discussion with them.
So
resource is going to be the first thing.
The response to that is that it is not for scrutiny to be consulting members of the public. It is for the executive to be doing that, and they have decided how they wish to consult with members of the public and stakeholders. We are in scrutiny, we are a consultee. It's not for scrutiny to then decide its own arrangements to consult with the public as well.
Go on.
We're consultees, so our opinion on what we've heard and discussed matters. We can challenge through that method, But when it comes to consulting the public, the executive is they're the people who want to know what the public have got to say. That's what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So that's it. We're part of that. I don't see that we can. It's not for us to organise any of these things. It's for us to make sure that we reflect as many opinions as possible.
Something to consider for future.
We would certainly, if I may say, Chair, we're developing each time we do something, each meeting we take a step forward. And I could say, looking back in 2 years' time, things will be different. And dare I say, better.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we can, but of course, the council will publicise all these arrangements and encourage people, and we can, through our own networks, encourage people.
Yeah.
And of course, councillors can make their own representations.
Yep.
To as well as the corporate scrutiny panel.
Yeah, and just to say, to coincide with the release of the draft budget in December, there will be an all-member briefing as well, and that will be going into your diaries very shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not entirely satisfactory, but we've got to a place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that all from
that's
you?
absolutely fine.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on then to place and environment. So we've had the October, so December we've got 3 things. Like I have had a request to defer the climate change strategy, but it's purely because the portfolio holder is away. I've not agreed it because so far I was wondering to see what might come into the January session. It looks like there's a couple of things that may well come into the January session. We've just heard about the left behind, and we've only got a limited number of meetings, and we've got a couple of things in the TBAs before the pre-election period. So I'm rather inclined not to defer it. The officers should be sufficient to. I mean, it's unfortunate not to have the portfolio holder, and we know we like the portfolio holder, but she's out of the country, so I believe. Then we've got January. We've got the licensing amended vehicle. We've got this left behind report that has come back from the executive. And also, if people remember, Councillor Brackenbury at the previous executive made the offer to allow us to look at the street naming policy, which didn't have any scrutiny, didn't go to the EAP, didn't go out to public consultation or anything, and there was some interest in it. So, if Councillor Brackenbury is there at the 29th of January, it would seem sensible to pencil that in then. And the other thing that we had was the enforcement policy, mainly traffic, but that could be done with a briefing, I think, and maybe if we can get the briefing out quickly, if there's anything to be discussed on it, we can use the briefing at that meeting. And then February we've got local nature recovery, which stock condition, and the LC whip. I presume that is the Wellingborough one, because it's they're all coming at different times, aren't they? Doesn't say. So then on the next page we've got the traffic enforcement and the unadopted roads. I'm not sure whether it was intended that was a briefing paper. Perhaps, again, we can do the same thing, get a briefing paper out of the department and see if there's anything that comes out of that. And then we've got a scrutiny panel asset rationalisation. That has to be restarted, if you like, with a different terms and different membership.
Just to confirm, Chair, the local cycling and walking improvement plan, that is for Wellingborough and Rushden area.
Yeah, I thought it was. So we've got some suggested things at the bottom there, and I think we've covered them all. Have we heard anything? There's a couple of them say waiting to hear from the assistant director. Have we had anything from them? The assistant director. And the housing, the bit down the bottom I'm looking at.
Ah, okay. We'll come back to you outside of the meeting and get an update to you as chair.
Again, we're running out of meetings, so it may be that some sort of briefing with it. Okay, well, happy with those? Yeah. Health scrutiny.
Thank you, Chair. Right. So we've done our November meeting. It was an effective scrutiny. So we've got in January, we've got dementia health services. With dementia health services, is this prepared to come to scrutiny in January? I heard from Raj that there were some issues with some of the items coming to scrutiny, that there is 3 and there's meant to be 1 coming. Have you heard anything of that, Ben? Because at the moment, as it stands, we've got dementia health services, home schooling and schools and school exclusions and public health recommissioning.
So, as far as I've been informed, those items are still coming to that meeting, but I will double check.
Yeah, please do, because Raj did mention something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think, Graham, you were at that meeting as well. He mentioned about only 1 item being available to come to scrutiny. I just don't know which items were not available. But with home school exclusions, with school exclusions and homeschooling, I really want to know ahead of it coming in what it's going to look like. How's it? Are they gathering data, for example, from homeschooling, from the parents themselves, without making them feel that they've been targeted for making a choice to homeschool their children? How are they gathering that data? How's the report going to be presented? Is it going to be from council data that we already have, while we're reaching out to understand how things have been done for the homeschooling the piece from the school exclusions? Do we have accurate data, and are we talking to schools around this issue? How's the report composition going to look like, if you know?
I will ask Sharice Monero and her team to provide you with a briefing in the next few weeks, so that you're aware of the style of the report, and so that you're able to comment on it before it's actually prepared.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And the public, I have no issue with the public health recommissioning update. But I do have a few urgent items, Chair, if you indulge me on this. There is the big concern that we have now, for example, Providers Unite, providers coming together because they're panicked, and we have Care Providers Alliance, also another team of providers coming together. This is namely in social care. And in this, before I continue, I'll declare an interest, although I'm not part of any of these alliances. But there is a very, very important point of scrutinising what the NI increases from this Labour budget will do to increase the charges that providers will be asking for from council. So in terms of being in terms of financial governance and preparedness, I would like to know what that looks like in Northamptonshire. Are we prepared for either care providers closing down, which a lot of them are, and how are we going to deal with the social care requirements in this area, but also if amounts are being asked from council to shave some of these cuts that's happening, that they're going to have to make, some of these absorbing some of these costs, that they're going to have to take on, and some approximating £250,000 for I think on average, if you're looking at a £5 to £8 million turnover company with 300 staff or so. How is the council going to handle these issues? I'll be interested to know. But is this a briefing or scrutiny? I'll lean towards more briefing from you, from the council on this. Is this something that can be brought to scrutiny? And of course, it's an urgent item. How can this be brought in?
I think this is, I think at the moment, because it is,
Just happened.
relatively new, fresh, I think if we ask colleagues in finance to provide a briefing, because I think it's wider than health services. There's sort of potential implications across service areas across the council and, up and down the country. So I think there's sort of conversations being had, lobbying being had by various departments in central government, etc. So I think we sort of need to see where the chips fall on this. So I'll ask Claire Edwards to prepare something.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bucky.
And Claire has indicated that in December she will have that briefing about what the effects of the new government proposals are from the budget and how it will affect us. So that's already on the cards.
Yeah. I can ask Claire to cover that in the all-member briefing as well.
Yeah.
So because I think there is quite a bit of interest.
It would also be interested within that briefing to find out how many providers locally are closing down, because I know across the country there's a lot of talk around, particularly from these alliances, that providers are shutting up shop because it's just far too expensive to employ. Thank you. So there are other points. So with the GP primary access being on the workflow, this is a continuous conversation that we've been having with the ICB on GB access and availability. But actually, what I wanted to get from this ahead of this coming in, and I don't think I can't see space for this to come onto the agenda ahead of it being dissolved for election season. But I'd really want to understand through a consultation potentially the impact of some of the recent changes. And I noticed from first hand and from talking to constituents that they are working more effectively. People are seeing their GPs, and there is other clinics like respiratory clinics that they have in certain surgeries now, and they have an app where they can book in and scrutinise, filter through who needs to be seen at the day, and people are getting appointments even if they are registering their issues and inquiries later on in the day than 8 a.m. So that's a positive thing that's happening. I'd want to find out if that's widespread across North Northamptonshire, and the changes from scrutiny and other mechanisms has made an impact. How do we get that through? Is this more of a briefing that I'll be asking for, or some sort of report from the relevant parties like the ICB? But it is a positive story from what I've heard.
Okay. And you've got, as you say, quite a full diet, and you've got quite a few quite interesting and important things in the TBCs. A couple of things I'm aware of, and could be. I don't know whether you can even fit in an extra meeting with all these bits and pieces, or whether some of them might be briefings. But
The two very important ones that I want to try and get in is the VAT on private schools and KGH patient pathway. VAT on private schools being more of a quite critical topic, and of course coming in January. I'd want to potentially get that in March so we can understand the impact of that.
I'll declare an interest as a governor of KGH, of course, which is on the website, but
Yeah.
they have got a brand new patient system coming in, which...
Is this Anima, the app?
No, it's nothing to do with the app. No, KGH have got a patient process mainly for outpatients, but so that people are taken through the whole process in one. It's very involved, and I couldn't begin to tell it, but it probably would take and it would be very interesting for people. It probably would take an online briefing on its own, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I had a briefing for governors, and it took a long time.
Yeah. Well, I'll be very happy to get a briefing on that, but I do want to see if we can squeeze the VAT on private schools in March. But as it looks, we've got two quite substantial pieces of work there. The Disabled Facilities Grant in March. I wouldn't expect that to be such a large item to discuss at all. So I would want to see if we can factor in VAT on private schools in replacement of that, if that's at all possible.
That's also the impact on our state schools.
Sorry?
The impact on state
Impact on state schools as well, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd want to also be finding out if their charity status is going to be taken away, therefore initiating these VATs. Does that mean that private schools are going to be paying business rates as well, which further exacerbates the issue? So I'd want that to be brought in March, if possible, in replacement of the Disabled Facilities Grant. Aside from that, I was thinking of potentially getting another meeting in if needed, but it'll be good for me to get an understanding of what's actually coming to the January meeting. Because at the moment I'm getting two conflicting responses. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Mr. Smith will...
I think that's...
Okay, so are we done with the £3, I think? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, which leaves us with the work plan from executive, which I think most things have been taken account of somewhere already. Obviously November's gone, so December's the capital programme, council and company. Well, that's basically the crematorium, active community strategic framework. That was in one of the committees, wasn't it? I think. Not sure. But I think I saw the misuse of substance somewhere mentioned in the work plans. The surplus asset only needs to come to us if it's a major one, otherwise it's just information. I don't know which asset that is. The Longhurst one's a variation to the contract. And the temporary stopping site, that just says that's an update. I think the stock condition we've got somewhere, haven't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Already. And then we've got the budget, well, we know about that. January capital ASB policies.
So, Chair, if I may.
DFG we've got, sorry, yeah, go on.
If I may. So again, with the antisocial behaviour policy and procedures is going to executive in January. We haven't ironed out, and again, it was on the review that we'll have in the peer meetings, the peer reviews, that this topic was discussed. I don't know whether antisocial behaviour falls under my committee or it falls under a different committee.
Communities?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's communities. Which
So it is under my committee.
Place.
And economy.
But it's the Director of Public Health that's delivering on this.
Yes, it's one of the weird
It's
ones.
bizarre.
I know.
Yeah, because I'm very keen on scrutinising, ASB and other young youth offenders, etc. But I think it falls out of my remit. But I just hope it's getting the scrutiny it requires.
Yeah, I suppose as it gets closer to January, we'll check on the sort of background to the report. So if it was, say, a report focused on antisocial behaviour in terms of public health, and it was very much centred around that, then we can review the appropriate committee. But on the face of it, not having seen the contents of the report yet, on the face of it, it looks like it's place in economy. But we will check that.
The only problem with that is that the executive meets on the 16th. The only available place in economy meeting is the 29th, so it'd be slightly pointless. So unless it did go, you have got a health on the 7th, but as you say, you're fairly full. But if something comes out, you could perhaps take that. We'll just, yeah. So yes, sometimes the diary is the problem, isn't it? The climate change strategy we've talked about. Wellingborough LC Whip. Well, that's been through any number of consultations and things already. And in February we've got the HRA, got the General Fund Budget and Capital Programme. That's all we've got on there at the minute. So I think we're not going to be able to get everything in, unfortunately. Maybe in future, bit better planning. Well, you're looking at the dates more, getting them so that they match the executive anything else? Anybody? Okay. In that case, close the meeting. 8:32.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I thought you'd be when you texted me this morning. Oh, that's Louise.
Oh, sorry. Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah. Presuming